Good morning, everyone. We have a full program, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. First of all, we're going to start out, as we should, with prayer. And our leader for our prayer team today is going to lead us in prayer.
Let's go before our God. Father, we thank you for this opportunity that you've given us. We thank you for the people who've come and the people who are going to share. We pray that you would be working in us and through us, that this event would be a success in that people who need information will get information. People who need help will get help. We thank you, Lord, for the strength that you give us, the guidance and the direction that you've given us. Thank you for bringing just the right people here, Lord. You know that. And so we offer this time up to you. May your name be glorified as we go out to do your will, to save those who are in danger. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Julia. Well, welcome, everyone. Those of you that don't know me, I'm Lee-Dale Casper. I have Beacon4Victims, which is an anti-human trafficking ministry. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming because I think this is an important message. It's not a fun message to hear, I'll admit, but it's an important message that we all must listen to. So I want to thank everyone here, and I want to thank everyone who is streaming it. I'm hearing that we have people all the way from Florida and New Jersey and Texas that are streaming us this morning. So thank you, although I think it's afternoon in those places. Thank you for streaming and listening to this important message. What does Beacon4Victims do? We bring awareness to the community, churches, faith-based group, non-faith-based group, anybody who would like to have a group to listen to what's happening in our communities. And as I said, it's not a fun message because it is horrible what is happening in our communities. You know, our society right now is just in an influx of different things happening. And I believe that human trafficking doesn't get enough press, doesn't get enough on the news as it should, although I do believe more people are becoming aware. And so thank you for coming so that you can become more aware. So not only do I bring awareness by speaking to groups about human trafficking, but we help survivors and victims. So we help victims I go out on the streets to a place where women are being sold for sex on the street. Yes, it is happening here in Southern California. Yes, it's happening in Florida, New Jersey. It's happening everywhere. And I volunteer with an organization, and we talk to the girls and talk to them about getting out of the life and help them if they need help. We also help victims when they get out. Perhaps someone has helped them get out, and then they can't get into a program until a few days later. So we will help fund for them to stay safe because they're usually escaping their trafficker. And if you don't know, a trafficker in sex trafficking is a pimp. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what a pimp is. And they're basically selling people, buying and selling people. And so we help them by funding a hotel, a safe place for them to stay, to hide from their trafficker until they can get to a shelter. We also help survivors when they are trying to get started. For example, we helped one last year who had never moved into her own apartment before. She had 2 little girls. She'd been out of the life for a while. They call it the life or the lifestyle or the game. She'd been out for a while, 7 years, I believe. But she had 2 little kids, and through the generosity of the donors, we were able to we filled up my husband's truck and a trailer to get her stuff so she could get started in her new apartment. So these are the things that we do, just a few of the things. I want to go ahead and talk to you about a couple of things here at the church today. Those of you that don't go here, there's bathrooms if you want to go straight out the back to the right and then to the right again. And then they're down the hall on the left. So that's where the bathrooms are. The information counter is also my booth for Beacon for Victims. As you go out and you just make a right, you'll see them right there. There's two wonderful volunteers, Mary and Gail, that are always there when I need help. They can answer your questions. You can sign up for my email distribution list there, and they have a sign-up sheet, and there's a little bit of literature that you can go look at. Is there anyone that did not get a handout? Everyone got a handout? Okay, good. I just want to go over this quickly. So the front is basically what we're going to be doing today. And on the back is information about our food cafe. It's a fundraiser for our Guatemalan ministry. So they're selling drinks and food for a donation. So I urge you to go over there and have yourself a little something to eat or drink at the break or afterwards. And then there's a list of exhibitors. And I put this together for you because these people have a lot of knowledge, information, and resources. Whether something has happened to your family or not, it's good to communicate and network with them. So it's a list, and then if you get home, let's say you go talk to NCMEC, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and you go, oh, I remember they had some information on this. I could use it. Their contact information is on there. So this is a little guide, helpful hint thing that I put together for you. Later on, we're going to ask you to fill out a survey. I would love you to do that when you leave at the break and after this program. They will be handing them out to you. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this program. I want to continue doing. Do you want more of these? Do you not want more of these? I want to continue doing what you want and what God is guiding you to tell me to do. And are we doing something good? Are we doing something bad? I would just appreciate your feedback. And then we have the exhibitors. You all saw them when you walk in. I again encourage you to go out and see them. We have our bookstore that's open over there. Go over there and talk to Trish, who's running the bookstore. She has some wonderful things for sale. And she has a book that she just put in there called Book in Pursuit of Love, and it's written by a survivor of human trafficking. A survivor of human trafficking is someone who's been out of the life a day or 25 years. That's what a survivor is. We call them survivors because the first step to getting out is a good one, but they still are continuing to deal with trauma the rest of their life. So this is about Rebecca Bender. I know of Rebecca Bender. She's helping survivors now. She has programs for them to deal with their background. So I urge you to go talk to Trish about that book. So today, how's this going to happen? We're going to hear from a panel first in just a minute. We're going to hear from the panel, and then we're going to take a break. And you're going to be able to see more of the exhibitors and get something to eat, use the restrooms. And then we're going to come back in here and we're going to have our keynote speaker. So we're going to take a break in the middle. So now, parents, I'm going to talk to your kids for a second. I hope it's okay. So kids, I know that your parents probably dragged you here. I'm sorry, I'm the reason. But I believe that you're going to learn a lot of information that you may not know, likely don't know. And this information is going to be key to help your parents keep you safe. But it's also going to be information that you can take home and to keep yourself safe. You're going to be hearing from real people that experience this. It's not like TikTok or fake news, where you don't know what's true and what's not true. These people are going to talk about firsthand experiences that they experienced when a predator went after a teen or a child. So I urge you to pay attention and challenge you to pick out some things that you've learned that you can apply to yourself to keep yourself safe. And to I can't think of the word, to make you want to do this, I have a little incentive, that was it, sorry. Incentive. The incentive is after the break or at the end of the program, if you go over to the Beacon for Victims booth, again, it's out the door and to the right, it's got a big banner, and tell them that you want to play the trivia game. They will ask you a question about things that were said today. And if you answer it right, there might be a gift for you. So a little bribery too, yes. Okay, so for now, let's bring up our panel, and I hope you enjoy. Oh, thank you, Daryl. Okay. Just let it fall. Thank you. Give me a sec. Okay, well, what am I doing? Dropping everything? Sorry. Let's just put it on the floor. Okay, well, welcome panel. We have Sylvia, Tiffany, and Savannah. I know your name. God, I had this all organized. Okay, now I'm ready. So I'm going to introduce Sylvia, and she's going to talk, and then I'm going to introduce the others, and they're going to talk. But so Sylvia Lacey Miller is Los Angeles County's first CSEC, commercial sexual exploitation of children, parent advisor, who supports parents and caregivers of commercial sexual exploited children who find themselves in a situation. She is currently Zoe International's parent advocate, coaching her colleagues on best practices for engaging with parents. And thank you for coming, Sylvia. So Sylvia and I met about, I'm going to say 5 years ago. So I'm going to let her tell you her story and what happened.
Hi, everyone. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Like Liddell said, we actually met 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, so I'm going to just say really quick something that how I met Liddell, and she was a blessing to me. At that time, my daughter was being trafficked, and she was actually missing. And so I went to a human trafficking event at a church, and that's where I met Liddell. I thought I was in a wrong room, but actually, you know what? God always works, He's a mysterious God. And so I told Liddell that, my daughter was being trafficked, and she actually prayed with me. And ever since that day, her words impacted me, and that's how I met her. I just wanted to, say thank you very much for praying for me and listening to me, because sometimes a parent needs that. So you guys know my name is Sylvia, and I am a parent of actually 6 children. And today I'm going to share a story about my daughter. In 2014, my world became a nightmare. At the age of 14, my daughter met her first trafficker. My little girl, Innocence, was taken. This took place right in my own community. We hear things that it's happening overseas, it's not happening in my community, but guess what? This actually took place right in my own apartment complex, right in my community. The life, like Liddell explained, that's the life that my daughter changed her, and it also changed me. I didn't know my little girl anymore. She had made new friends. She stopped going to school. She was running away, and she was stealing from me, from her family. And she became verbally, physically abusive. She was angry. She was distant. She even started drinking heavily, using substance, you name it, weed, pills, NAS. I continually seen my daughter coming and going under the influence. She would constantly pick fights with me, and I couldn't understand. I couldn't help her. So during these times, actually, what a parent goes through, it's a cycle, as our children also go through a cycle. But as parents, as me, as a parent that went through it, at first I was in denial. I did not believe it. Her father would actually send me messages and telling me, your daughter's on social media and she's shaking her butt. And I was in denial because guess what? I used to take my daughter to her friends. I used to take her to her parties. I knew her friends. Even all that, it was right under my nose and I had no clue. I trusted my daughter. And so from there, I lost control of my daughter. I no longer was able to keep her at home. I was no longer able to be her mom. She became a stranger. We became strangers to each other. Not only did it affect me, but it also affected my whole family, my other kids. My other kids could not understand what was going on with her sister because what they saw was a behavior. They saw that she was being disrespectful. They saw she would call me names. We had physical fights. Police were called many times. And so my children hated their sister, and they couldn't understand what was going on with her. And again, how can a mother balance, or a father, or any parent out there, how can they balance trying to keep it together and not tell your other children what's going on with their sister because they could not understand? And so this actually took place 5 years. And during this 5 years, like I mentioned, I made multiple runaways reports to police. Traffickers will actually pick her up right in front of my apartment. They have no shame whatsoever. They call her daily. I constantly see my daughter in fear of the power and control that they had. They didn't need to be physically there, but just over a phone call. I can share one incident where my daughter's jaw was broken, and she was at home, and this was by another trafficker. So while my daughter was being trafficked, it was just not one trafficker, but there were multiple traffickers. But this one incident, this one day that my daughter was at home, just 2 days out of the hospital, that her jaw was stapled because this young trafficker, only 17 years old, repeatedly just beat her and broke her jaw in 2 places. I witnessed my daughter being so afraid, being so controlled that that's all it took, just one phone call. And I can hear him yelling at my daughter, telling her, you need to get out there and you need to go make my money because you're missing out on my money. And I can see the face and the terror in my daughter's eyes that she was so frantic and panicked that she didn't know what to do. And I literally just stood there and I told her, please don't go. You heard what the doctor said. If one slight move, you can lose your jaw. Please don't go. And thankfully, I thank God that she listened to my words. She stayed. But I just wanted to share that these traffickers, how powerful they are with just words over the phone. They don't have to be, right there, or they don't have to pick you up, but they have that much strength of the words, how they control them. And so I lived for 5 years not knowing what was going to happen. I lived 5 years not knowing if my daughter was going to make it alive. I lived not knowing where she was at. And like I mentioned, the power of the traffickers, of the power and control that they had, they used to threaten my daughter. She was raped multiple times. She was beat up. And she even jumped out of moving cars to escape traffickers. She was advertised on social media and dating apps that I know my daughter had no clue how to do that, but they advertised her. And so these 5 years were really very hard, but I can tell you one thing, that knowing the signs and all this, what I just shared with you, these are signs that a parent as myself did not know. All I saw was that it was a behavior problem, because even the schools would call me and say, you need to come pick up your daughter because she just walked out of the classroom or she was rude, and we can't babysit her. So as for myself as a parent, how can I tell the school, this is what's going on? I don't know if my daughter's actually being trafficked at school or there's actually recruiters there at school. But one thing that I did know was that, yes, the recruiters were at school. They were her own friends. And I can tell you also this one thing as a parent, like I shared, that I knew the friends. They came over, they spent the night, they ate at my table, and they would tell me when I allow her to go to their parties, don't worry, Miss Lacey, we're going to take care of your daughter. I trusted them. Even one of her own friends, when she saw what my daughter was going through, how she saw how I was suffering, trying to be there for my daughter, looking for her. Have you seen my daughter? She came home one day from college and she said, I need to talk to you, Miss Lacey. She says, I am so sorry, but part of what your daughter is going through, I'm the blame. I'm the one who introduced her to her first trafficker. I even trafficked your own daughter. When I would come and visit her and I would come and tell you that can she come out with me, I would take her down to the Blade so she can make money for me because I needed money for my college. I needed money for gas.
And the Blade, Sylvia, is?
The Blade, I'm sorry, the Blade is actually, it's a street, and there's many Blades, Long Beach, Beverly Hills, Figueroa. These are actually streets. Yes, these are actually streets that are filled with young girls, older girls, even boys, even young boys, and they have them, they traffic them. So they put them out there for sale. One of the traffickers actually had put my daughter on Figueroa, the Figueroa Blade. And that is actually sometimes that my daughter would call me, Mom, can you pick me up? No matter what, I went to pick her up. Yes, like I mentioned, a parent goes through many different cycles. First, you're mad, you're upset, you cuss them out, you call them what they are. But I'll tell you this, because of the grace of God that He worked in my heart, and that's what is the issue. It's a heart issue, that we look at the problem, we look at the behavior, but what is really going on? I never got down to the root until the Lord started speaking to me and telling me, this is not your daughter. This is what's going on out in the streets. This is what is going on with our children. Our children are being taken advantage of. Our children are being destroyed. And us as parents, we need to stand up. And this is what God gave me the strength. God gave me the power to overlook that and to look at the roots. He told me, this is your little girl, and you need to look beyond what's going on. Because your daughter is hurt, your daughter is broken, your daughter is lost. And the only thing that's going to bring her back is the love that I'm showing you, how to love your daughter unconditionally. Because I used to put conditions on her. Well, if you do this, I'll do this. Well, if you're not doing that, well, I'm not doing it neither. And you know what? God changed it. God changed my heart. I love my daughter, and I was there day after day, night after night. I had nightmares, I went through depression, I went through a roller coaster. But one thing that gave me power and it gave me the strength to go after my daughter was that I'm not going to have these traffickers take my daughter from me. I'm going to continue fighting for my daughter, and I'm going to be there for her. And this is one thing that I like to share, that what my daughter, thank you. This happened when she was 14. My daughter now to today, she's 22 years old. My daughter has left the life, but she is still having a difficult time. But one thing that kept her going was like, Mom, you loved me, you were there for me, and you didn't judge me, and you're still here by me. I love you for that. And just really quick, my daughter actually testified 2 times. And this is also very hard for anyone to go and testify and recall everything what this person had to go through. I also testified, and I didn't expect that. But one thing that I was not ashamed of was that I was a parent that was going to stand up for my kid, and I was going to be there and testify, because no child should have to go through this, and no parent should have to go through this alone. And that's what I thought. I was alone, but I wasn't. God was with me all the way. And wonderful people like Dale that came in my life at a certain time. Parents need to be heard. Parents need to know that they're not alone. Parents need to know that it's not their fault. Also, that is one thing that I went through, that I thought it was my fault because I was a bad parent. Boy, but that enemy, that he had me, but God was always speaking to me and telling me, no, I'm showing you what's going on, because this is what's going with other parents. Not many parents actually fight for the children because they don't know how to. They don't know how to ask for help. And so as my message for the parents that are here now, this is very sad, and I cry because my heart hurts, because I work with other parents, I work with other families that are going through the same thing, and they don't know where to get help. They don't know how to talk to someone about it. They don't know that there are people out there that are not going to shame them. And so for parents that are going through this, please do not be ashamed, because this is something that the enemy wants you to be ashamed. And no, I am here to tell you that there is hope. I am a testimony, and my testimony is someone else's lifeline to another parent. You're not alone. There's help. There's support. And for parents, if you have children that you think, listen to them. Look down to the root. Know the signs. Get educated. Talk to people. Get resources, because there are resources for parents. And I found the hard way, but it's a blessing, because now I'm a blessing to other parents, that I connect them to other resources. You know, at first too, I thought the social worker was my enemy. I thought law enforcement was my enemy. I thought courts were my enemy. I was wrong. They were there for a reason. They were there to also help me. And this is what I tell the parents. Give the social workers a chance. Listen to them. Give the police officers, that not everybody is trained and educated in human trafficking. So that is why it's very important to get educated. Let other people in, but have a listening ear, get information, and know that you're not alone. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Sylvia. I know that's hard. Just so you know, for both of these on the panel, this is a very hard thing for them to do. Speakers that do this, it brings up their past, and they're very, very brave. And I want to thank you all for being here. They're very brave for telling their story. But I have a couple of questions for you, Sylvia, so that the parents know. Can you? How did the traffickers get your daughter? Was it the Romeo pimp where he pretends to be a boyfriend? Or how did that happen? Or was it force?
Before I answer the question, I just want to say that why it's also emotional is because I recently lost my mother.
Yeah.
But the reason why I'm sharing this is because when I was young, I ran away, and I kind of fell almost in that same cycle as my daughter. But because my mom always went looking for me, because my mom always called and searched for me, she showed me how to love and to go after my daughter. Because of my mom, that's what I also did for my daughter, because my mother never gave up on me. And so the answer to your question was as my knowledge and what my daughter shared with me, because it was even difficult for her to open up to me. Mm-hmm. But because she actually told me that the trafficker actually tricked her into promising her a job.
Okay.
That was one. The other trafficker, yes, it was the boyfriend.
Okay. So these traffickers, these pimps, these predators are extremely good at what they do. it's not that the people that get under their wing, so to speak, are naive. Even very smart people, even become a part of this. They're very good at manipulating people. They look for your vulnerabilities. Now, I don't know about you, but I have vulnerabilities, and I'm not young. And they'll look for your vulnerabilities, and they'll use them and begin to manipulate you, or they will do it through force, coercion, threaten to kill your family if you don't do what they want. There's all sorts of tactics that they use that we need to be aware of. So it's not something that just easily happens. They work a lot to get our youth. And it's not just our youth. If a trafficker thought he could sell a 71-year-old woman, such as myself, he would be coming after me. There's not as much a market for me, but it has nothing to do with age. The Rebecca Bender that I talked about the book earlier, she was in college, and how he went after her. And I urge you to get the book and see the tactics that he used to get her. She wasn't young. She wasn't naive. She was in college. So everyone is vulnerable, but the most vulnerable are our youth. And so I commend the youth for coming here, even though, again, your parents may have dragged you here. I commend you for coming here and listening. So do you have any advice for the kids to look out for, Sylvia?
The advice for the kids that I have, what I experienced with my daughter, is that she wanted to be accepted. She wanted to fit in. She wanted to be recognized. She wanted to be loved. You know, don't fall for those lies. If a friend's going to really be a friend, they're going to want better for you. They're going to want to lift you up, and they're going to tell you, no, don't do that. That's wrong. My daughter she was a leader, but she was lied to. You know, come hang out with us. You know, you in gangs, but don't listen to them. Don't fall for the lies. And also, another thing that I want to tell for you kids, if someone tells you to send them a picture and you've already done it, don't be ashamed, don't be afraid to tell your mom, your uncle, your aunt, or someone you trust. Do not be afraid, because guess what? You have the power to stop it from continuing when they can threaten you and tell you, oh, well, I'm going to show this to the school, or I'm going to show this to your parents. Tell them, so what? They know. Don't fall for that lie. Speak to someone. Don't never be ashamed, because your parents are there to love, to listen, and to protect you. But how can they protect you if they don't know and you don't open up to them?
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, and thank you for coming. I know that you're going through a lot with your loss, and I'm sorry for your loss. Okay, our next panelist is Tiffany. And Tiffany is a mother of 5, a current beauty queen, title holder, founder of 2 nonprofits. She's a survivor of human trafficking who has made it her mission in life to leave the world a better place than when she came into it through acts of service and kindness. So thank you, Tiffany, for coming.
Young and vulnerable, found herself living with the family of the man she was now betrothed to. Prior to their nuptials, she was finally experiencing that nuclear family that she was seeking. since the divorce of her parents. The father of my soon-to-be stepfather used his son, my stepfather, independent of his knowledge, to help groom my mother and establishing a quick trust in him and his wife, acting as my paternal grandparents, adopting me into their household as one of their own. Grooming is a method used by offenders that involves building trust with a child and the adults in their lives in an effort to gain access to them. In extreme cases, offenders may use threats of physical harm, a sexual assault, or further abuse to attain continued access. Shortly after my mother's marriage, I was spending countless hours in my abuser's home, several overnights, and quickly was being ushered by my grandfather to auditions for local pageants, print modeling gigs, and commercials. The more time spent with this seemingly upstanding man who was a war hero and now an auditor for the IRS and sang in our Catholic church choir and was an active member of the Knights of Columbus, the more access he had to me. The tactics this man used with my mother were grooming, provisions, either monetary or food, and manipulation, especially by providing her a false sense of stability. Tactics this man used with me as his victim, and please keep in mind that part of trafficking is the attainment of a minor child to engage in forced sex acts. They do not have the ability or the consent to give. They also have not the ability physically to refuse it. Initially, he spoke often of how I was very special grandchild, his special granddaughter, grooming me, telling me that we had a very unique relationship.
And Tiffany, can you explain what grooming is, please?
Grooming is the tactics that predators use to gain access to their victims. So sometimes they will give the false promises of stability. Sometimes they will, with me, what they did with me is he made me feel like I was very safe, I was very special. The acts that we were engaging in were very unique, and only very special, very loved little girls got to have those special moments with their grandfather. He also bribed me, which was a form of grooming as well. After engaging in these acts, which I started to recognize were not appropriate, especially as I started getting older with the introduction of sex education, he would bribe me with trinkets and peeps, which I can never eat. I hate Easter now because of them. Yeah. Later, he would threaten me that if I told anyone, it would destroy our family unit, and everyone would think I was a liar anyway. That was later proven when I did tell on him. Once I finally mustered up the courage to advocate for myself at the young age of 10 years old, after sustaining almost 7 years of constant sexual abuse by this man, not only by himself, but to his friends as well, because he would host parties where his adult friends would come. They would play a game called Wahoo, and when you won Wahoo, you got a chance with me. Once I was dubbed a liar. My mother was too fearful to lose her famed structure and familiar foundation. She elected to accept his truth, continuing to subject me to my assailant an additional 2 years, all in exchange for assistance on her mortgage, groceries, social standing, and of course, the ability to never truly have to accept her shortcoming and take accountability for essentially trading her own child for advancement in her social setting. Yes. She later further victimized me by gaslighting me for 2 years, continuing to excuse her behavior under the guise it was providing for our growing family. I was helping our family. This was a small sacrifice. Gaslighting is the psychologists use this term to refer to the specific type of manipulation when the manipulator is trying to get someone else or a group of people to question their own reality, memory, or perceptions, which they did. We later relocated to California with the divorce of my mom and then stepdad, my mother later conveniently citing the long-term abuse I sustained as the explanation. In her mind, this is how she was able to justify her leaving us behind and prove to herself she did protect us. It was the greatest lie she unfortunately told herself. She did attempt to seek counseling for myself, but she never sought it for her own, never recognizing that I was not just the victim. Our entire family was the victim. My younger siblings, my then stepdad, and my mom. My mom being one of the biggest victims because she had no idea she was sex trafficking me in the exchange for security. Later, as I moved into California, 2 years actually after moving to California, I naively, at the age of 15 years old, walked into yet another situation that was far more scary. Enter Steve. Steve was an adult man who frequented the high school campuses prior to and after school. He had 3 young accomplices who trolled the local schools for young and impressionable girls, inviting them to routinely scheduled parties where the male attendees were 21 years or older, and the goal was to offer them underage girls for what they called in jest, filing, short for pedophiling. Steve used the bait of a young, freshly graduated 19-year-old volunteer walk-on wrestling coach to feed girls into these parties. His friends first befriended the young ladies using grooming tactics, which I spoke of before, often seeking out loners, girls who had silent Lolita complex, which the Lolita complex is usually a young lady who comes from a broken home, has endured some type of trauma in their lives, and they exude a sexual energy that surpasses their age. And very vulnerable girls, usually in discord with their families. Alex, the wrestling coach, would make these girls feel like he was a safe space to talk, then use all those secrets to his advantage, feeding them to our traffickers. Steve and his other accomplices would convince the young girls that they had no one else in their lives. Their parents didn't love them, their friends hated them, and all they had was them. We became completely dependent on our adult traffickers. They provided things that most teens our age didn't have access to. We had cell phones, money, pagers. My parents didn't provide this to me. My mom and her new husband didn't have the resources to. That was the first thing my mom should have tuned into. Where did my daughter get these clothes, this money to buy these clothes, this pager, this cell phone? And why, when this pager goes off, does my daughter suddenly become incredibly anxious? Her behavior changes. She's mean. She's withdrawn. Her social circle has changed. In fact, I don't even think my daughter goes out anymore. I did, but not when they knew, often sneaking out of windows. And this is where my parents really should have stepped in and invaded my privacy more. They tried with searching through my bedroom and peeking around, but everything was hidden from them, and secret applications on my desktop, in my pager, and my then Nokia cell phone. I had an entirely hidden world in AOL at the time. And this world was filled with fear. If I upset Steve, he would disfigure me by sterilizing me with a curling iron, which is something he had told me often. If I didn't respond to him within 5 minutes of receiving a text message, I would be met with some form of punishment. Once I was able to leave him, by the grace of God, I turned 18. I aged out. He didn't want me anymore. He had moved me into his home as a senior in high school, and now I had nowhere to go. He packed up my things the day after my birthday, 9/11, which was the day that the Twin Towers fell down, and so told me he had no use for me. I didn't know where to go. My parents were no longer speaking to me. They had completely disowned me. They didn't know who I was. That led me to my last trafficker. He was my own partner. He did the Romeo complex, where he led me to believe he was my hero. I quickly married this man because he made me feel safe. He had the guise that he was a good person. Through our marriage, I had no knowledge. He had nanny cams through our home. He was capturing intimate moments between us and placing them on the internet for sale. He had taken images that we had shared with each other privately and sold them on the intranet without my consent, further victimizing me. I felt more violated and raped in those moments than I ever did actually committing sex acts for other men. I couldn't tell you the level of disrespect I felt in that marriage upon that discovery. But I will say I looked into legislation upon that. Revenge porn and acts of those nature are very illegal. I regained my sense of self-worth. I wasn't able to get closure with my first 2 traffickers, and not even with my own mother, who inadvertently did traffic me. But I was able to with this man. I divorced him. I made it almost impossible for him to have access to me and any other person in my life. And any images that come up on me on the internet that I have not given consent to fall under that legislation. And I continue to collect information on that, evidence, so to speak. Just know that trafficking happens all the time, especially if you were a victim previously or you sustain some kind of trauma throughout your life. It makes you more vulnerable. You would think that when I escaped it the first time, that I would have thanked my lucky stars, but I was conditioned, completely conditioned. I had no idea the energy that I was giving off. I had no idea what I was doing because I wasn't mature enough to understand that this man had completely groomed me to have what is called the Lolita complex. By the time I was an adult and I entered into that marriage, I so desperately wanted to be saved and protected. I didn't vet the people I was engaging with. I just wanted a hero. And he took advantage of my circumstances, knowing that I was a previous victim. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to end with one last quote by Jack Kerouac. Practice kindness all day to everybody, and you will recognize you're already in heaven now. And we need a little more heaven these days. And I reminded myself today, because this was a very difficult speech to write, that happiness thrives when I help other people. And damn, you guys, this felt really good.
Thank you, Tiffany. Again, this is very hard for people, and they're just very, very brave for doing this. But I did want to point out a couple of things that she said. Number one, did you notice that the trafficker didn't just groom her? He groomed her parents and got them to trust in him, to take her, to take her and to show her to do modeling, right? Pageants, modeling, things like that. So parents, we can be caught in our vulnerabilities. And you teens, these people were very good at getting her. They knew what to say. They knew what to do. And she was young, very, very young. And so at that young age, she wasn't able to see through it. And it's not just because of her age. Adults can't always see through it. So you need to be careful when you are talking to people, getting to know people, especially on social media. Sharing photos should never be done, even if they're not compromising, because that predator can use it in different ways and sell it to pedophiles in the deep web.
To piggyback on that, especially, you had mentioned TikTok earlier. TikTok is the biggest form right now of sexual trafficking. They are targeting your children through TikTok and young women. How they come across by doing it is they act like they're your friend. They send you private messages. They offer to give you a modeling contract and so on, and then it goes from there. They also use coercive tactics where they threaten you and make you feel scared if you don't share that content with them. And TikTok is all real, video-based. So the things that you can share aren't as censored as much. And just know that that application is completely structured differently in China where it was developed, and it's a very G-rated application, but it is not that way in the United States. Anything goes. So watch their applications. Look at their Instagram. Look at their Facebook. Look at TikTok. Put child protective screening devices on their cell phones, because I think it's called Bark. That's a really good one. Do those. Check in regularly. Have conversations with your teenagers, because my parents never did. All they saw was a change in my behavior. They wrote me off as a behavioral problem. The school wrote me off as a behavioral problem, never seeing I went from a straight A student to flunking out.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany. And I'm going to say it again, and I'll probably say it again. Please go out there and talk to our exhibitors. They are doing something about it. They can give you advice and resources. I brought them here on purpose with the theme of for parents to get more information on this area. So thank you, Tiffany. So Sylvia, if they want to talk to you more later, can they come see you at your Zoe International booth outside?
I will receive you with open arms. You're more than welcome.
And Tiffany, she's going to. You're going to be at my booth. And do you mind if people come and ask you more questions and talk to you? Please do. Okay. Next, Savannah. Savannah is a counselor, and I wanted to bring someone here because it's very important if something happens in your family in this area of trauma, or any area of trauma, that you get counseling, not only for the family member, but for the whole family. So I thought it would be good for you to hear from a counselor that does counsel people. And she also is an exhibitor out there, and you can go see her at the break and afterwards if you want. So Savannah is an associate marriage and family therapist. She has a master's of science in clinical psychology. She has a deep interest for inner healing with the exploitation of spirituality and integration of art within the context of trauma, recovery, family, couples, and couple therapy. And she's out there in the booth called A Quarter Blue. So Savannah, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'll try again. There we go. Thank you so much, Liddell, for having us. I really appreciate it. And thank you, too, for sharing your stories. It's an honor to be here today. Before I share a little bit, I would like to take a moment and have us do a couple breaths together, because we just heard some very important, very meaningful, and also very difficult stories and realities. So we're going to take a second. Notice your toes, your feet. Have your feet on the ground and wiggle your toes for just a moment. I want you to bring attention to your forehead, your jaw, and we're going to take a couple deep breaths. When you breathe in, you're going to breathe in through your nose, and we're going to hold. When we breathe out, we're going to breathe out through our lips. So we're going to breathe in, hold, slowly breathing out and melting a little. Breathing in. All right. Yes. So one of the things that I really wanted to bring up today is the importance of involving the family as a whole, something both of you pointed out. When family is not involved, there's this void. Thank you so much. There's this lack of connection, this lack of support in many different ways. So one of the things that you pointed out that I wanted to bring up is those who have gone through trauma before, previously. It doesn't have to be sex trafficking. They can go through something at home. If that's not addressed, they can be predispositioned to to be ushered into sex trafficking. And one of the reasons why we want family involved is for us to have hard conversations that usually don't really want to be addressed, right? Things are so taboo or difficult or too hot or too cold, too uncomfortable to sit in and to discuss. And oftentimes, when someone brings their child or their teenager to me and say, hey, here you go ahead and fix this individual, peace out. I'll come pick him up in 45 minutes. Oh no, you're coming in with me. We're going to discuss this. I'm not going to fix your child. Your therapists are not there to fix your kids. We're there to fix you. We're there to fix the entire family system. Because when there is a trauma, it is not just that one individual, it bleeds into everyone else. There are behaviors, right? Sometimes people will oversleep, or they'll stay up so late because they can't fall asleep. Why don't they just go to bed? Why don't they listen to me? I'm telling them these are the rules of the house. They might not be sleeping because they're having nightmares. Or they don't feel safe to fall asleep because when they're asleep, things happen that shouldn't be. And that is something that usually doesn't come up unless we're in family therapy talking about it, discussing it. And if someone is sleep deprived, they're emotionally dysregulated. And it is a difficult time to have any kind of productive communication. They're going to be angry. They're going to be acting out. They're going to not know how to emotionally regulate with all of those heavy, scary, and just overwhelming emotions. So these are some of the things that I would talk about whenever meeting with family. How is the sleep going? What are their support systems like when you feel they're not listening to you? I'm talking to parents, parental figures here. How do you feel? Do you feel, oh, they're disrespecting me? I have to put my foot down. I have to be the leader and really show them these are the consequences for this, this, and this. And it's important to have consequences, right? That provides containment to some degree. However, their behavior is telling a story. And instead of being critical and judgmental and harsh, addressing it with curiosity, openness, tell me what's going on. This is different. That allows them to kind of have a little bit more permission to relax and share the heavy thing that they have never known how to even verbalize because they don't want to disappoint you. Fear of disappointing someone or being judged is so difficult. And that's the thing that can keep a person caged in for years. So when you are normalizing hard conversations, asking those questions in a relaxed, curious manner, you're inviting very important connection. Another reason why it's important to involve the family, you had mentioned this, siblings. Siblings feel it, they see this behavior, and they can build up a form of resentment because they don't understand what's going on. And it's hard and it's hurtful and just, it can boil over and families can disconnect. And when families disconnect, those other siblings are also at a risk. Because usually when someone goes through trauma, the parent will focus their attention on the child who has experienced the trauma, right? There's going to be ample energy, conversation, attention, and maybe even some overprotectiveness, really coming down hard on some ground rules. And it's all focused on this individual. And the other people involved are feeling unseen, invisible, not as important. Or this isn't fair. Why do I have to do X, Y, and Z when it was this individual who got in trouble or went through this experience? Being able to get together and talk about things is healing. And it's not always so serious. We do play games sometimes. Did you have any questions? All right, well, let's see. I had a couple other thoughts here. The book that you mentioned, The Pursuit of Love, that's something that I think is so crucial because it really does nail down where these individuals are coming from. They are so desperate for connection, for belonging. And one way to increase connection and belonging at home is to, as best as you can, be available. You might have a really busy job. Maybe you're not home as often. But when everyone is home, be present. Be in the here and now. Put your phones away. Have them put their phones away. Sit at the dinner table and eat together. Ask each other questions. Get to know their hopes, their dreams. Ask them what they're afraid of. Tell them what you're afraid of. I did want to do an activity, and this is something that you can engage in. You don't have to if you don't want to, if you don't feel comfortable doing it. But if you are sitting with someone who came with you and you feel like you can trust them or you're wanting to trust them and you're comfortable with doing this, I'd like for you to turn and lock eyes with this individual. And it's okay if you feel a little giggly about it, because usually that's what comes up is the giggles. But you can turn, lock eyes. I'm not going to have you say anything right now, okay? I just want you to turn and look and see what comes up in you. If you came alone, I want you to envision someone, a trusted family member, friend, or chosen family. Envision that face. But you're going to turn and look and notice the emotion coming off of that person. Do they seem a little nervous and giggly? Do they seem calm? Do you feel warmth from them, love from them? Do you feel distance from them or guardedness from them? What do you think you're feeling in response? Are you feeling guarded? Are you feeling cold? Are you feeling warm? Are you feeling seen? This is what we do when we're meeting together in family therapy. And I have 3 things for us to say. I did say yet. So looking at that individual or envisioning that person who you're wanting to connect with, locking those eyes, we're going to say 3 things. The first thing we'll say together, it's, I see you. So you're going to turn, you're going to look at that person, and you're going to say, I see you. I'm not pulling teeth. We're good. All right. The next thing you're going to say, you're going to turn to that person and you're going to say, I am trying to see you. I am trying to see you. And then the third thing, and this is important because sometimes when we're communicating with family, when we're communicating with parents, or parents are trying to communicate with us, I'll make myself a kid right now, they're not getting me. They don't see who I really am, right? mean, you guys see me, but I don't really know if you see me. So the third thing that we're going to say is, I am trying to see you. All right? I am trying to see you. Yeah. We will try, and we may not always truly meet the person where they're at. And that's okay. Sometimes people are going to miss you and miss what you're trying to say, or you're going to miss someone. As long as you claim and trust that you are trying and that other person is trying, it enables that door to be open so that connection can happen. Because if you're trying to try, you will.
Thank you, Savannah. Thank you. That was wonderful. Okay, you've heard a lot of heavy information, and I'm glad that you did that little exercise. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to take a 15-minute break. And okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to get started because the parents that have kids in childcare, they're going to have to pick them up at 11. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. If everybody could please come on in. So welcome back. You'll have an opportunity to see the exhibitors and have something to eat afterwards when we complete this. As I just said, I'm going to have to be rude and interrupt Linda if she's not done. Not her fault. We ran over. And because those that have kids in childcare, you have to pick them up at 11. So I'm going to set an alarm. Don't you set alarms, please. I'm going to set an alarm. Silence your phones, and then I'll have to. Linda said it was okay. She forgave me already. So I am so excited to introduce Linda J. Berg Herring. Linda is a native of Orange County, California. She's worked in the investigation industry for 41 years and obtained her private investigator license and began doing business as LJB Investigations in June 1966. Prior to entering the PI field, Ms. Herring was employed in law enforcement and also danced professionally, and I've seen pictures of her in her tutu as a ballerina. Having originally studied academy and possess a bachelor's, She graduated from Rio Hondo Police Academy and possesses a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and psychology and a master's degree in public administration. She describes herself as a general investigator and conducts many types of investigations, including asset searches, background checks, cybercrimes, due diligence, elder abuse, fraud, personal injury, tenant screenings, workers' compensation, and more. Linda's passion lies in the fight against sex trafficking and sextortion, especially of children. And if you don't know what sextortion is, she'll just explain it whenever she's speaking. Linda lives in Coto de Caza with her husband, Scott, who is also a private investigator, and their spy pep, Mannix. So please welcome Linda.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. So as Liddell said, I've been doing this work for 41 years, and the reason I got so passionate about the fight against trafficking of children is because all those years ago, one of the very first cases that I worked involved a young girl, a 10-year-old, who had been kidnapped by her uncle, who raped her multiple times over a 72-hour period, then sold her to his friends for sex. So we found her within a week, but that was a really long week for that little girl. And from that, I just thought, anything I can do to help kids, because stuff like that just should not happen. So a lot of people for years acted like I was crazy when I talked about trafficking and said, no, it doesn't exist, but it does exist. It's happening everywhere. including here. So we already kind of discussed this. What is sex and human trafficking? That involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or commercial sex act. Every year, millions of men, women, and children are trafficked worldwide. Victims are any race, gender, or nationality, and it's happening everywhere. The sex trafficking trade is the #1 business after drug trafficking, and it's growing. It's probably going to pass drugs. I know of a very prolific trafficker that lives near where I live who used to be a meth dealer, but he makes more money selling kids, so he changed occupations. He hates me a lot, and I like that. I don't mind. He threatened me for years. I'm like, whatever, come get me. The average age of a child that's sex trafficked is between 11 and 14. Obviously, it can happen much younger, and it can continue longer than that. Family members exclusively traffic most children under the age of 10. 74%, I can't read that, 74% of trafficking cases involve sex trafficking, and the majority of those involved pimp-committed prostitution. Okay, I have to look at my paperwork instead of that. I can't read it. I'm getting old, apparently. Okay, so the United States, this is not something to be proud of. The United States is one of the worst countries globally for human trafficking. Not all trafficking involves forced labor, as we know. It's believed that 1 in 5 human trafficking victims is a child. And we're going to talk about protecting the kids. California consistently has the highest number of human trafficking rates in the United States. So that is a huge fail on the part of California. We do not want to be #1. 90% of trafficking cases in Southern California are related to gangs. According to Polaris Project, in 2020, 10,583 situations of human trafficking were reported to the United States National Human Trafficking Hotline, involving 16,658 individual victims. As shocking as these numbers are, they're just a small part of it because a lot of victims don't ever report, either because they can't, they're afraid, they're not alive to report. A lot of it's not reported. Sex trafficking victims are more likely to be white or black compared to labor trafficking victims who are more likely to be Hispanic or Asian. The majority of sex trafficking victims are female, but rates in males are rising. It's not uncommon for girls who are actively being trafficked to go to school every day like normal and then go home at night. So sometimes you can't even tell it's happening. Social media is used in 90% of cases. This is why kids need to not be on social media, which I know all you kids are going to hate me. I don't care. We were at an event last night, and someone asked one of the people on the panel with me how old a kid should be before they can have a cell phone. The answer is 14. And most applications, the ones that are made here, it's illegal to be on those applications until you're 14. But there's lots of kids on them, and that's where you get in trouble. Sextortion and social media cases have greatly increased since COVID, when everyone was locked up in their houses. You'd think your kids would be safer, but no, the kids had a lot more time to spend on social media, and the predators had a lot more time creatively grooming the kids. Pedophiles are teaching victims to groom and sexually victimize other children, and this occurs in schools, starting as early as elementary school. The average age that a child first sees a pornographic image is 8, and that's usually on their buddy's cell phone at school. Again, another reason, no phones till you're in high school. Potential trafficking victims. There's a whole lot of things that make you vulnerable. The one that I tend to focus on is it's someone who's desirous of being loved, accepted, admired, and included, which means every single kid could potentially be a victim. If there's a history of childhood abuse or molestation or something like that, or being in the foster system, that also makes them especially vulnerable. But, kids want attention and they want to be loved. And unfortunately, these master manipulators know that, and they know how to go after the kids. Victims are sold and advertised in many, many places, not just on the streets where we know they're sold on the streets, but on the internet via sex ads, chat rooms, apps such as Tinder, Grindr, TikTok. We all hate TikTok. Facebook, etc. They're all those apps. At events and private parties. Super Bowl week is always huge. No matter where it is, huge for trafficking. Hotels and motels. Brothels ran out of apartments and private residences. I once lived in an apartment complex. The person that lived next door to me was trafficking people out of their apartment. And it was in a really nice neighborhood. So you just don't know. So this is what we really want to talk about, though, is how well do you know your child? Don't hate me, guys. When I get contacted by parents on missing child cases or possibly groomed or trafficked children, one of the first things I discuss with the parents is their child's social media interaction with strangers. Every single time the parents say, my child would never do that. Every case I've ever worked, the child did do that. That's not a negative on the child. All of this stuff is the predator's fault. The kids are not at fault. The parents are not at fault. It's the bad guys. But your child will do that. They will talk to somebody. Children don't recognize stranger danger online like they do on the street. You see that creepy guy. There's, the white van, which is really not that common, but there's creepy people that walk up at the mall or something like that. They can be dangerous, but they're not as dangerous as the people online for the most part. And the kid's response is, that will never happen to me because you guys are all invincible, right? I was a kid once. I was invincible. I know how it is. Sometimes I still think I'm invincible. You'd think I would have grown out of it by now, but maybe when I'm like 70, but, not quite yet. But a lot of kids, a lot of people just don't believe this stuff is happening. But it is. That's a fact. It is happening. And the online danger has grown dramatically since 5G came into existence because now people everywhere in the world have access to the internet. People out living in the bush in Africa have an iPad and they can be on the internet. And then the third most common thing that I'm told when working on these is I've warned my kids about the dangers of social media. Well, just saying be careful is not warning your kid. So sextortion-related cases especially, sextortion has led to suicides. These kids are killing themselves within hours of meeting their new friend online, who they send a photo to. I'll talk about that a little bit more, but they're too ashamed or too embarrassed to tell their parents what's going on, and they can't figure out how to get out. And the parents every time say, I told him to be careful. It takes more than that. So, great ways to protect them is, kids, still don't hate me. Do you know all of your child's social media profiles and passwords? When I work on missing kid cases, usually the parents know the one app that their child is on the most. And then I look at their phone and their computer and they're on 12 or 14 apps. And the parents have no way to sign into those apps, so I have to hack into it, which can take hours. Whereas if they knew that information, it could take me seconds to get in there and possibly find out who their child's been talking to and who might have them or where they might have gone when they ran away. Do you know how many friends and followers your child has? TikTok especially. You get little teeny kids that are adorable doing their little dancey thing, and they have 10 million followers. The vast majority of those followers are pedophiles. And TikTok, anybody can contact your child on TikTok. There's no filters, there's nothing. I know the TikTok people don't like me, but. And then, does your child sleep with his or her phone or a laptop nearby? That should never, ever, 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 ever happen. Did I say that? Should never happen. It needs to be somewhere else. Plug the phone in another room to charge overnight, something. It should not be with them. Because you have no idea who they're communicating when they can't sleep at night. And then, even more important than all that, effective communication between you and your kids is key to keeping them safe. When I was 9, I was a dancer. One of the girls at the dance studio was being molested. And I went home and I mentioned it to my mom, and she slapped me for talking that way. So I never went to her with anything important again. So I learned very, very young. I talked to my dance teacher, I talked to my grandma. When I started working as an investigator, I talked to my boss. Never talked to my mom about anything that mattered. Your kids need to know that if something's going on, they can talk to you, and you're not going to get mad at them, you're not going to judge them, they're not going to get in trouble. They need to know you believe in them, that you're not just making up a story if you go and tell them what's going on. Okay, so you need to monitor your child's internet use. You need to limit their time on it, obviously. They should have time with their family, that whole watching TV with the family, having dinner together. Those things don't happen that much anymore. Like I said, don't allow them to sleep with their devices. According to NCMEC, 89% of kids still sleep with their electronics. And predators love talking to sleepy kids. According to the FBI, there are 500,000 predators online at any given moment, 24 hours a day. Remind your child that also, regardless of privacy settings, anything they post stays out on the internet forever, and they have no control over that. You send that photo to somebody, it's gone. There's no getting it back. Remind them that sharing private information is not safe for them or family members. A lot of teenagers will share information or pictures, and in the background is their little younger sibling. And that's who the pedophile really wants, is the younger sibling. So they gotta be really careful about that. If they want to put a picture out there, make sure that it doesn't show their school in the background, the street you live on, a car with a license plate, because these people are masters at getting information from that. There was I think a stalker case not too long ago where the guy looked at the reflection in the retinas of the woman that he was stalking and figured out where she was living, and he went and killed her. So, yeah, it's a dangerous world out there. So if your kids are on the internet, if they have a phone, which again they should not be doing either till they're at least in high school, you should have all of their passcodes, all of their passwords, know all of their apps. You don't have to check up on them every other day. It's not to spy on them or to violate their privacy, but it is to keep them safe in the event something happens. Especially dangerous apps that are out there. There's new ones all the time. The number one right now, the top two are TikTok and Kick. Yeah, Clapper. Yeah, and then there's Be Real is one. Discord is especially heinous. There's a lot of, you can go do like virtual chats or, live chats, live video chats with total strangers. The app just randomly picks people for your kid to talk to. Like, what could go wrong there? And then if you really want to be disgusted, go check out Omegle. Just go to omegle.com when you're by yourself and no kids are around. It's terrible. And then hidden apps. Kids are sneaky. So are people in general, but anyway. A lot of kids do have hidden apps on their phones and their computers. You need to make sure you have complete access. As long as you're paying for those devices and you're signing the contract, it's your device. So they have no privacy rights whatsoever, as long as they're not paying the bill and they don't have the contract. Okay. The most popular app for hiding things on a phone is Keepsake app. It's a private photo vault that's hidden behind your child's calculator. The only way to get into it is with a PIN code. So if your child has that on their phone and you find it, you want to either make them remove it or demand the PIN. Or you can just repossess your phone. I know, I mean, if I had kids, they'd hate me. And that's okay. So, online predators, signs to look out for. The first question a predator will ask a child is, how old are you? There's a little bingo app that I play bingo on every now and then. And my avatar is a picture of a dog I once had. So it's a cute little white furry dog. And her name is Kira, and that's what I use when I play. And there's a chat room in every game. No matter what it is, there's a chat room. And oftentimes, within a minute or two of me starting to play, someone says, "Hey, Kira, how old are you?" Well, if I'm in the mood to play with the bad guy, I say I'm 12. And I have done that, and they instantly invite you to go somewhere else, which is the same as being kidnapped on the street and being taken to a second location. If some stranger says, "Hey, let's go chat in a different app," don't do it, because that's where trouble starts. What I do kind of like is oftentimes when Kira says she's 12, other people in the chat say, "Don't talk to that guy." I like that. More people are starting to do that, so they're recognizing that that's a dangerous thing. More signs are a new friend that your child meets provides no personal details, none, not one. They ask your child all kinds of questions about them, where they go to school, what sports they play, their favorite food, their favorite music. They don't tell them anything about themselves. And that's because they're gathering information to use to further manipulate the kids. They request additional or more personal photos. Well, we all know where that's going to go. The new friend tells the child not to tell his or her parents about them. That's a huge red flag. The parent's new love interest shows a bit too much interest in the children. There have been people documented on dating apps who admit that they date someone that has children the age that they prefer to molest. So that's how they seek out their new partner, looking for victims. And then Tiffany mentioned this earlier. Bark is a great app for monitoring your kids' social media activity. It's like $14 a month, so it's cheap, and it's easy, and it works great. I recommend it regularly to my clients. There's a ton of underground activity that happens on the dark web, the deep web. The regular web, it's kind of hard to pass child pornography and these kinds of things. They do it, but a lot of the apps report it to NCMEC. Their bots report it. Stuff that's done on the dark net, however, is not reported, and if somehow it gets reported, it can't be traced. And that's where things go when kids are sextorted. Let's skip a couple of these. Okay. Just recently, all over the news, there's been a report of a lady in Arizona whose child, she believed, was the victim of an AI kidnapping scam. So artificial intelligence. The general consensus in the investigation world is it's much more artificial than intelligent. So one of my buddies posted that. I love that. But this stuff's been going on forever. It's probably going to get a bit more popular. But you get a phone call, and it sounds like your child is in the background screaming or begging for help, when your child is really at school or at home. It happened to an investigator friend of mine years ago. And he knew his daughter was at school, but he still went, got to make sure. So he had his wife calling the school while he's on the phone with the fake kidnapper. This stuff probably is going to get a little more popular just because AI is such a big deal right now. So the best thing to do with that is make sure that you have a password or a phrase that only your kid knows and you know. And it can be just some random thing. It should be an unusual thing, obviously, that only you would know. And that way, if you get one of those phone calls, if the kid can't say the password or the phrase, you know you're good. Okay, so some of the signs a child might be in danger or in the process of being groomed by a trafficker. Suspicious activity on their devices is huge. They mentioned they met a new friend online, but won't tell you anything about them and won't let you communicate with them. They become secretive. They hide their devices. They hide all kinds of stuff. They have a second phone or device all of a sudden. Like, where did that come from? And a lot of them suddenly talk about plans to leave home. And how dangerous is it to run away? It used to be you could run away for a day or two and come back and everything's fine. You taught your parents a lesson, you think. Well, it's not the way it works. According to our most recent prior district attorney in Orange County, I haven't talked to the current one about this, but a runaway child, even here in Orange County, will be contacted by someone who will either attempt to get them to use or sell drugs or who will try to traffic them within 18 to 24 hours of leaving home. That's another reason you need to have those passwords, because I need to be able to dig into your kids' stuff to find out who they're talking to. Doesn't matter where you live, nice area or not. So it's not uncommon for runaways to run to someone they met online. I've personally worked a lot of cases that involve that, with usually a girl who thinks she's communicating with a slightly older boy. I had one that involved a theme park that I won't name. The girl was 12. She thought she was talking to a 14-year-old boy. He convinced her to go to the park, and she went with 3 of her friends. So the 4 of them went to the park together with their parents' permission. And once they got there, he messaged her and said, "Hey, meet me over by the restrooms." Well, her friends let her go by herself, which was not smart. The 14-year-old boy was really a 45-year-old man who grabbed her and basically carried her kicking and screaming through the park. Nobody did anything. The couple people that tried to stop him, he said, "She's my daughter, she's off her meds, she ran away. She's crazy, whatever, I'm taking my kid home, back off." And they did. So it wasn't until after she'd been stuffed into a car and driven out of the parking lot that a patron at the park called 911. Her phone had been thrown out of the car in the parking lot, so there was no way to ping her phone. The description was not the best, but it was a white guy in his mid-40s, average build, wearing a very wrinkled Mickey Mouse t-shirt. Not saying where it happened. It just happened to be what he was wearing. So, of course, 911 was called. Her friends waited almost 30 minutes before they called her parents and said, "Hey, she didn't come back." They didn't try to contact security at the park. Of course, security at Disneyland isn't allowed to touch anybody. So even if they were following the guy through the park, they really couldn't have done anything other than say, "Excuse me, sir." That's not going to get anywhere in a case like this. The parents knew someone that knew me, and they called me. So we have me on it, we have law enforcement on it, we have a couple other investigators I work with on it. And it didn't take very long to find her, but they did get the license plate from the car, which didn't match the car. So the guy had switched license plates. But they had the license plate, and a license plate tracker found the car at a hotel that was not very far away, but it was 2 cities away, which makes it harder to get them. They typically at least go 1 city away, because law enforcement is communicating, but not that fast when it's a teenager. And so, found at a hotel. We convinced the hotel people finally to let us in to the room that she was in, and found her by herself, curled up in a little ball in the corner, terrified. The guy had told her he was leaving to go buy cigarettes, and that if she moved, he was going to go to her house and kill her little sister. So she stayed. He, of course, saw the police presence at the hotel and took off. But she was found unharmed, terrified, obviously, but unharmed physically, I should say. That guy ultimately was identified, but he got away. He's wanted in 2 other states for doing the same thing. Someday he'll get caught. When he does, this poor little girl who went through counseling for the terror, but she's going to have to go through a trial, and she's going to have to remember that this happened. And her friends, don't even get me started. They never should have let her go by herself. So if you're going to go meet somebody, don't go by yourself. That could have saved her right there. So who are these predators? Everybody, anybody. It can be, ministers, doctors, teachers, military, police officers, and the creepy guy that lives in his mom's basement. Once in a while, there's the random creepy guy in the basement. But more of them are these so-called normal people that you just wouldn't even suspect. And then back to the dangers of a new location. That's out of order. Anyway, stranger danger. Well, you teach your kids about stranger danger out in public, you have to teach them about stranger danger online, because they can't just talk to anyone and everyone. Some quick additional signs of someone that might be being groomed or trafficked. Changes in personality. suddenly shy or suddenly extremely extroverted, so just a reversal. Changes in the language and the slang they use. Changes in style of dress, a new hairstyle, weight loss or weight gain, gifts from mysterious sources. Physical injuries they can't explain, like bruises, scratches, cut marks, burns. Mysterious new tattoos. Traffickers love to tattoo. They might have a malnourished appearance. Traffickers don't necessarily like to feed the people they're trafficking. They avoid eye contact and social interactions, especially with law enforcement or people that look like they might actually care. Responding in manners that seem rehearsed or scripted. If you ask what they're doing, who they are, where they are, just a random, nonsensical response. Lacking personal identification documents or withholding their name and age. Sometimes they don't know their name because they don't know the name they're supposed to be using. Lacking personal possessions. When's the last time you saw a kid with no phone? So a girl with no phone. They sometimes don't know where they are because they've been moved somewhere. And they're typically with someone at all times who has full control of them. Oh, I have to be fast. Okay. So not long ago, I did a case where a very young child was at risk of being trafficked by family. A 4-year-old boy. His mom and dad were divorced. Mom just didn't want daddy to have his little boy. There was no reason for it. He was a great guy. Mom, however, who was non-custodial, not allowed to have the child by herself, took off with him from back east and decided to bring him to California. She was a pole dancer and a stripper. So she was taking this little boy, bouncing across strip clubs across the country, and had told the child's dad that I will sell him to a trafficker before I'll let you have him. So I was hired because they found out she was in California, so to try to find her here and to get the little boy. I was given documentation so I could take the boy without, me being charged with kidnapping him. I tried to avoid that. And we did find her. She was advertising at the time on Craigslist, and she was doing video ads. And it showed her, pole dancing, and her little boy in the background cheering her on, which is just terrible. So after several days, going strip club to strip club, not a pleasant thing, she was found, and the boy was given back. She hates me too, and that's okay. I don't care. She's done it 3 more times. So this poor little boy, his mom keeps trying to steal him and sell him. And she probably will if she ever really gets the chance. Luckily, we're a step ahead of her, but families do that. It happens a lot. Okay, so we're going to go really quick. We have 3.5 or 2.5 minutes for sextortion. Okay, sextortion, blackmail with a photo or a video. Okay, it's falling apart. Girls appear in the majority of sex abuse materials. Prepubescent children are at the greatest risk of being depicted in those materials. Boys who are victimized are much more likely than girls to be subjected to very explicit or egregious abuse. On average, boys are younger than girls. And 78% of reports regarding online enticement involved girls, 15% involved boys, and 8% they couldn't tell. Okay. So the dominant motive of offenders had been to get more explicit photos. But in 2022, that kind of shifted, and more of them are now seeking money, and especially from boys. So it all starts with a photo. This is where you never send a photo to someone you don't know for a fact. A new person friends you. The kids are groomed, flirted with, love-bombed, and typically invited to leave their original app and meet in a private chat room. Then a slightly provocative photo is requested, and that's where the trouble begins. The perpetrator, who knows everything about the victim because he asked all kinds of questions, starts threatening to share that photo with friends and family or their school. They don't do that. They actually take that photo and they send it out to their circle of fellow predators all over the world, usually in some other country. But within minutes, they're demanding money. They want video. They want more photos. If they don't receive it, they continue threatening. This has resulted in kids committing suicide. There are documented cases where the text messages that parents found after their child committed suicide, the perpetrator said, just go ahead and kill yourself, you're dead already. It's terrible. Organized crime is involved in a lot of it. A lot of it's done in other countries. I'm speeding up. So since a lot of people from other countries are the perpetrators, they can't be prosecuted either. There's no extradition to our country, so they just get away with it. So that's where we need to protect our kids. So just ignore that. A predator, usually to start with, when first talking to someone, will ask if they have siblings, how old they are. They'll ask what sports they like, what food they like, if they've ever had sex. That often comes in there. They'll offer to pay for photos. They'll send a photo of themselves and say, I'm going to send this to you if you send one back to me. And of course, the photo they're sending is one they basically stole from some other kid. Okay, so if you suspect that your child is being groomed, trafficked, sextorted, or if you see another child that you suspect, the most important thing is say something. If you see something, say something. Making a 911 call that ends up with nothing is way better than a 911 call not being made when someone's being trafficked. So that's huge. And law enforcement does not mind when they get a call and it ends up being a false alarm. If you suspect your child is being trafficked or sextorted, talk to them, especially sextortion. The only way to stop it is if the kid reports it. So it's going to keep on going and going and going. And obviously, we don't want more suicides because of this. Make sure your kids know they can talk to you about anything, no matter what. You're not going to judge them. You're going to believe them, and you're going to do whatever you can to help. And then the entire family needs counseling when stuff like this happens because it affects everyone. Okay. So, she's going to interrupt me.
I'm so sorry, but if you have children in childcare, then you have to pick them up now. But you can come back, or you can go out and see the exhibitors. You don't have to leave. We're going to be here for a little while. And then when Linda is done, we'll do a Q&A. Okay? Thank you.
I guess I'm flipping through everything. Okay, so I just said this part. The only way out is to tell someone. So you want to educate their kids that the only way out of blackmail is to tell someone. They can tell a teacher, they can tell their parent. Kids need to know they're not invincible. You're really not invincible. It can happen to anybody. According to medical experts, young males especially are vulnerable to sextortion-related scams because their brains are still developing. They're not quite ready to figure out that there's a way out of it, and there is a way out of it. Okay, I just already said that part. So, if your child's a victim of sextortion, do not delete the photos. Screenshot the photos. Do not share them with anyone, which someone did with me recently after she shared with 25 other people. Don't share with anyone other than law enforcement. Go to your local law enforcement agency, take the child and the phone, ask for their cyber crimes unit, or report it to Homeland Security or NCMEC. And then they'll handle it from there. Get counseling. The entire family needs counseling. The victim's separate from the parents. You need to have a family strategy on how to handle it, on how to work with either law enforcement, with an investigator, someone, and always make sure the child knows that you believe in them and they're not damaged in your eyes. I had a case involving a 15-year-old girl that ended up on Pornhub, and her dad had hired me to try to find out what she was doing. And the saddest part of the whole thing was he said to me, once we were all done, he said, I don't know how to look at my daughter anymore. And that was just devastating. He said, she's still your little girl. She was forced to do something terrible, but she's still. So they're in counseling and probably will be forever. If your child's gone missing, you're not alone in any of this. Your child goes missing, runs away, gets involved in trafficking. There are people out here to help. There's a lot of us. Ready and willing to help. I do trafficking and missing child cases free of charge. A lot of investigators charge a huge retainer and just take it and don't find the kids. Or they'll work for 2 or 3 weeks and then stop. I don't stop till we find out what happened. And once they're found, I often stay in contact with the child and the family. I got a bunch of kids that, they're like my kids. Didn't give birth to any, but I got a whole bunch of them out there. So how can you assist in the fight against human trafficking, and sextortion? Join your state or county human trafficking task force. They're all over the place. There's lots of entities, legitimate entities that are out there fighting this. There's also some shady ones, so you want to kind of check out who you're dealing with. Seek out training, like you're doing here today. Take part in events, and if you see something, say or do something. That is kind of my mantra. If you have questions or want additional information, you can always contact me. There's my info. And also, I have an exhibitor table out there that has all my info. And if it wasn't for Million Kids, I wouldn't be here. So Million Kids is a nonprofit that was formed for the purpose of sharing information and educating kids on how to keep them safe. So I was lucky enough to meet the president and CEO of that a few years ago, and she's got me out here talking. And then there's also, if you suspect someone's being trafficked, you can call the national hotline at 1-888-373-7888 or text help to 233-733. Or you can contact NCMEC's Exploited Children Hotline. And then this next slide, it's also on my booth out there. I suggest that you subscribe to insideralerts.org. Million Kids does that. Opal, who's the president of Million Kids, she puts these out. It's not a constant thing. You don't get spammed. But when there's something significant going on in our area having to do with human trafficking, sextortion, she does an insider alert, and they're phenomenal. Great, useful information. So, and that is it.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Is this on?
Doesn't sound like.
Not working. Is it working? Now it's working. Now it's working.
You just had to bend over there.
So do you mind taking some questions?
No,
Is there anyone that has any questions? Well, I'll bring the microphone to
Do
you.
I fear for my life? No. Because yeah, so I've been involved in a lot of scary things, but cancer's been trying to kill me for a long time, and it hasn't won, so no trafficker is going to get me either. They should be afraid of me.
Yes. Amen. Any other questions? Oh, I'll bring the microphone to you, Kim.
It's on more on a personal level. What is this more of a ministry for you, or because obviously you're doing this at free of charge? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, all right. So is this a ministry for you, or what has compelled you to go on this level of offering your services for free? Obviously, there's expenses involved in this. And
There are expenses involved, but I have my business, my investigation business. That's where I make my money. And I just decided, 41 years ago when we did that first case, that there's no way I would have a parent call me and say their child is missing and say, oh, if you can't give me $30,000, too bad. I would never do that. So it's kind of I call it my passion project, for lack of a better word.
so it's a side part of it.
It is, yeah. Yeah, I do charge for other stuff. Do have to make a living.
Any other questions?
I think there's-
Oh, let me come to you with the microphone so they can hear you, because there's people streaming.
So you had a lot of interesting information in the PowerPoint. Is there any way to get access to? There was a lot of details, yeah.
Sure. If you signed my little sign-up sheet on my exhibitor table, I will send it to you. I'll email it to you, yeah.
Any more questions?
My husband has a question.
One moment, sir.
I swear he's not a ringer. Okay.
Hi, two things. First, I am work in the hotel industry, and there's an app called Traffic Cam that I encourage you all to download. You can take photos of your hotel rooms, and it goes to, you can probably say more, but it goes to a database basically, and if there's photos posted online, they can kind of figure out where a child might be kept and be able to come and save them, hopefully, if, depending on how quickly it's posted and that they're still there. We also go through training for human trafficking signs in the hotel industry. It's mandated. It's kind of scary, but one of our hotels actually broke up a trafficking ring because of that training. So thank you all for being
great.
here.
Yeah.
Second, I've gone to seminars and such on this topic, and it's shocking to me that there is not more repercussions for the people who are the reason that this is all happening. How can we change that? I mean, obviously, legislature and things like that, but how it's appalling to me that these women are getting in trouble and the Johns and the people who are paying have zero repercussions.
All I can say to that is think about who you're voting for.
Yeah. If I may respond to that, I belong to a coalition. There was a bill in that was signed. Went into law January 1st called SB 357, and I was on a coalition to stop it. And we're in California, and these things just aren't happening here. I'm sad to say. And that bill pretty much legalized prostitution. I don't know if you know that that's what happened. It went into, I go out on the streets, as I said earlier, and I talk to the women that are being sold. So I talk to victims. And when that bill was signed, not in law yet, it was signed, we could see an increase in trafficking on the streets just because it was signed. And crime increased, the traffickers became more brazen just because of that bill. There is another bill that, if you want more information, you can sign up for my email distribution list on at my booth, Beacon for Victims. It's SB 14. And what we're trying to do right now, it was determined by a former governor here that trafficking was not, I repeat, not a violent crime. After you heard today what is happening, I don't know if any of you would agree with that, because I don't, but they're trying to make it a violent crime and be part of the 3 strikes. So if you want to put that on your sign up for my email distribution list and put on their SB 14 or law or bill or whatever, I'll send you information about it. But we need to stop this. We're going in the wrong direction. And women are being victimized, children are being victimized, and we need to stop it.
And one last thing.
Oh, okay.
You asked what we can do to make things different. Stigmatize. Stigmatize. Shame the perpetrators. Make them feel bad for what they're doing to people. Don't give them an open door policy to do this, because oftentimes the people who have the consequences, like you pointed out, are the sex workers. I hate using that verbiage, but that's what it is. They're the ones who get impacted by law enforcement. So you need to go after the people who are extorting your children and those women. Mine never had accountability. And he was a long-term, he had a 30-year history within the community of doing it to other people. Also, the second one never had any accountability. He had other children working for him in his ring. Those children should have some accountability as well. So you have to look at creating accountability and changing legislation. We have statutes of limitations on what these people are doing to people, and the only things that are exceptions are things like sodomy, that it has no statute of limitation. So you need to change the statute of limitations on these crimes.
Thank you, Tiffany. I'm going to do Scott, and then I'm going to close the Q&A because if you want more questions, if you have more questions for Linda, she'll be out there at the exhibitor area. So, yes, stranger.
So this isn't really a question, it's just a reminder because we do have parents here. You might want to mention about your workshops that you do online.
Yes.
That's all.
Thank you. It's good to bring your husband along. He's helping with the booth. Good job. I am doing, once or twice a month, I'm doing a workshop via Zoom. It's free. That is like 3.5 hours of this information. So there's a lot more that I can talk about. But also, those of you that have signed up for email, I'll send you information about that too. And like I said, they're free. I think my next one is May 18th, and it's from like 9 to 12:30. And I'm doing one on Memorial Day, also 9 to 12:30, which maybe people that are working normal jobs will be available that day. So yes, it's great information. Kids can watch it too. It's sort of kid-friendly. So yeah, thank you for the reminder.
Well, thank you, Linda. Thank you so much for doing this. And so this concludes this part of it. If you're interested in seeing exhibitors, I encourage you to do that. Teens, if you want to go out there and see about that gift, don't forget about that. Your surveys, please, please, please fill out the surveys and give it. We have some volunteers by this door at the various locations and baskets that you can put the surveys in. Don't forget about that. And if you want to know more, please sign up for my email distribution list. Network with these exhibitors. They know all sorts of things. They're very knowledgeable, and this is one of them. So thank you for coming. I hope it was beneficial.